Our topic was image generation using Pixel CNN, Pixel RNN, VAE, and GAN. Our group members include Akshay Agrawal, Jay Dutonde. A GAN is a type of neural network that is able to generate new data from scratch. You can feed it a little bit of random noise as input, and it can produce realistic images of bedroom or birds or whatever it is trained to generate. One thing all scientists can agree on that we need more data. The advancement in machine learning today is because of more computational power and more data. The data collection part is often expensive and sometimes we don't have enough data to train our model properly. Hence, we can use several generative models to generate artificial data. Till now, machine learning was mainly used to get rid of rule-based models. But with the help of generative models, we can enter the creative world and ask our model to generate art images, human images, etc. With the help of VAE, we can achieve lossless data transmission. This can be achieved by first encoding the data into smaller dimensional latent space and transmitting it and further decoding it with the decoder block into other side of the cell, hence achieving faster data transmission. In this project, we are aiming to build various generative models trained on MNIST dataset and compare the performance of the output. Methodology. This section gives detail about the design and architecture of various generative models and the data pre-processing techniques and loss function used to train the models. First, let's talk about the dataset. The dataset is the famous MNIST dataset, which contains 60,000 images of handwritten digits from 0 to 9. Now let's talk about the different architectures we use. First, we use vanilla GAN. We reference from this paper mentioned in the report. Now, what is a GAN? In GAN, basically there are two adversaries, one generator and discriminator. They are trained simultaneously. Now, the GAN basically contains two components, generator and discriminator. Usually, Gaussian random noise is fed to the generator and generated a fake sample. Then the fake sample is mixed with the real sample, and the job of the discriminator is to discriminate if the sample is came from the real sample or the fake. Now, what pre-processing we use here? So each image was transformed from range -1 to 1. Some implementation use transform image pixels into range 0 to 1. We use the first. Now we can see the architecture of a generator. We use dense layer. We use 4 dense layers with the leaky ReLU activation function. Our generator takes 100 dimensional noise as input and generates a 28 by 28 images output. We use leaky ReLU activation function with alpha equal to 0.2 to solve the dying ReLU problem, and also the end of each layer we use batch normalization with momentum equal to 0.8. At the output we use the tan h activation function because our output input was scaled to -1 to 1. For training we use Adam optimizer with learning rate equal to 0.002 and momentum equal to 0.5. Had been we have used the we have transformed the image into range 0 to 1. In the last layer, we have used the sigmoid activation. Now, this is the model summary of the discriminator and generator. We can see there are about 500,000 parameters in the discriminator and 1.5 million parameters in the generator. Now, after training the GAN, we can see the output. Now the same training. In the vanilla GAN, we used only dense layers. So now we try to use convolutional layers in the second part. We built our custom DC GAN where the discriminator contains 2D layers, 2D con layers, and the generator contains transport convolutional layers. Now let's see the architecture. Now we can see here our generator is given an input of 25 dimensional noise as input, and it generates a 28 by 28 dimensional output. Here also we use leaky ReLU activation function with alpha equal to 0.8, and at the end of each layer we use batch normalization with momentum equal to 0.2. At the output layer we used a sigmoid activation function because our input was scaled to 0 to 1. Last time we have used the tan h activation. For training we use Adam optimizer with learning rate equal to 0.00015 and momentum equal to 0.1. We change the transformation technique and some hyperparameters to notice the change in the output if any. Now this is the generator architecture summary. We can see our generator consists about 700,000 parameters. Now similarly we build the discriminator. Now discriminator, as we discussed, consists of basically con2D layers, which is convolutional layers, and our discriminator contains about 100,000 parameters, and this is the sample output of the DC. Now we see the output is not very clear. We also suffered during the course of the training. We saw the loss was the accuracy of the sample, or the crisp and sharpness of the sample was increasing at the first, then it started decreasing, and our DC can also suffered with the mode collapse. Now in third architecture we use VAE. We studied the paper An Introduction to Variational Autoencoders, and we built our custom encoder and decoder. Here we use only dense layers in the decoder and encoder blocks. Now thirdly, we studied the paper Introduction to Variational Autoencoders and built our custom encoder and decoder. In pre-processing, we scaled the image pixels in range 0 to 1. Now we can here see basically the architecture of VAE. A VAE consists of two blocks, encoder and decoder blocks. In encoder blocks, it predicts for every latent variable two values, mean and standard deviation. And for decoder blocks, take a value z, which is equal to mu plus sigma e. E or epsilon is basically a random noise which is taken as an input. Now the job of the decoder block is to take this sample latent vector z and output a sample which is close to x. Now we can see the architecture of our VAE. Here we use latent dimension as 2 for various reasons. First is to say, if the latent dimension is 2, we can easily plot and see the difference of various latent variables in our output. And in our encoder block, we have 4 con2D layer and 2 dense layer. We also applied reparameterizing technique to allow our model to train using backpropagation, as discussed earlier. Now this is our model summary of the encoder block. Our encoder block consists about 500,000 parameters. Now let's discuss about the decoder architecture. Now, as we discussed, decoder architecture takes input as the latent variable z and produces output x, which is similar to the input. Now we need to discuss about the loss function. Now the loss function of a VA is a weighted loss between the reconstruction loss and the KL divergence loss. So we have implemented a custom layer for that, which can be seen in the screen. Now this is our complete architecture in which we have combined the encoder, decoder block and the custom loss layer, and we can see the loss curve. We use Atom optimizer for training and trained our model for about 50 epochs. Now we can see spatial position of each number with respect to Z1, Z2. As we discussed, we use 2D latent dimension so that we can visualize the dimensions using a plot. We can see the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 forms several clusters in the space. Now if my Z1 ranges between -4 to -2 and Z2 ranges between -2 and 1, then this area basically refers to the number 0. Hence we can for every number we can define a range, and given that range our model will generate that particular number. Now this is the sample output. Here we varied our Z1 from 0 to 500 and Z2 from 0 to 500, and we can see the change and the different numbers generated. Now the fourth architecture we implemented was pixel RNN. We studied the paper pixel recurrent neural networks, and referencing it built our custom model. An effective approach to model such a network is to use probabilistic density models like Gaussian or normal distribution to quantify the pixels of an image as a product of conditional distribution This approach turns the modeling problem into a sequence problem wherein the next pixel value is determined by all the previously generated pixel values. There are four different architectures which can be used, namely row LSTM, diagonal by LSTM, a fully connected network, and a multi-scale network. LSTM refers to a long short-term memory. The network consists of up to 12 layers of two-dimensional LSTMs. Two type of LSTM layers that are used are row LSTM and diagonal LSTM. Now, the row LSTM, the hidden state ij is dependent on previous row j minus 1th column, j plus 1th column, and jth column. Now, this process the image row to row from top to bottom, computing features of the whole row at once. It it captures a fairly triangular region above the pixel. As we discussed, the hidden state at ith row depends on the columns j minus 1, j plus 1, and j column of the previous row. Hence, it is able to capture a triangular region. Now, this is the pictorial representation of row LSTM. Now, diagonal by LSTM consists the formulation as pixel ij equal to pixel ij minus 1 plus pixel I minus 1j, which means the pixel at ij is dependent on the previous row jth column and same row j minus 1th column. The receptive field of this layer encompasses the entire available region. The processing goes on diagonally. It starts from top corner and reaches the opposite corner while moving in both directions. Now, there are two type of mask used, type A and type B mask. This mask is only applied to the first convolutional layer and restricts connection to those layers in current pixel that have already been predicted. Now, type B mask is applied to other layers and allow connection to be predicted in colors in current pixels. Masks are important part of networks which maintains the number of channels in the network. Now, the loss function and evaluation metric. Here we use the negative log likelihood. Log likelihood is used as the loss and evaluation metric as the network predicts classifies the value of pixel from 0 to 255. These are some sample output of our custom model. Now lastly we discuss the architecture pixel CNN. The main drawback of pixel RNN that training is very slow, as each state needs to be computed sequentially. This can be overcome by using convolutional layer and increasing the receptive field. Pixel CNN use standard convolutional layer to capture a bounded receptive field and compute features of all pixel position at once. It used multiple convolutional layers that preserve the spatial resolution. However, pooling layers are not used. Masks are adopted in convolution to restrict the model from violating the conditional dependence. The architecture was referenced from the paper Conditional Image Generation with Pixel CNN Decoders. Now, Pixel CNN lowers the training time considerably as compared to pixel RNN. However, the image generation is still sequential as the pixel needs to be given back as input to the network to compute the next pixel. The major drawback of pixel CNN that is performance drop. Its performance is worse than pixel RNN. Another drawback is the presence of blind spot in the receptive field. The capturing of receptive field by CNN proceeds in a triangular fashion. It causes several pixels to be left out of the receptive field. As shown in the figure, since convolutional neural networks capture a bounded receptive field unlike by LSTM and computes features for all pixels at once, these pixels aren't dependent on all previous pixel, which is undesirable. The convolutional layers are unable to completely process the receptive fields, thus leading to a slight miscalculation of pixel values. The pixel left out constitutes the blind spot. Here we can see the blind spot. Now this is some sample output of the pixel CNN. Now conclusion. Our study explores various generative models and their performance on generating images of handwritten digits of 0 to 9. We found vanilla GAN to be better in output than DC GAN, and also DC GAN was inconsistent in training, producing good results in midway of the training and then at the end it diverges. Ideally, DC GAN should perform better, but as MNIST is just 28 by 28 images, vanilla GAN also performs well. DC GAN will perform well for higher dimensional images and good hyperparameter tuning will be required for them. VAE also performed well with nice sample images and also showed how images change with the change in latent variables. This shows we have a good control in latent variable. This sign is good for generative models. VAE images were good but lack some sharpness. Pixel RNN performed quite good and produced crisp and clean outputs. On the other hand, Pixel CNN produced very bad output images, as we can see. We are not able to see what the digits are clearly. Now, these are some of the reference. We reference from 4 research papers, which can be seen on the screen. Thank you.